We tend to think of history as being written in stone and steel, but the most influential stories, they're actually written in water and mud. They are the chronicles of submerged coastlines and forgotten harbors, places where the very shape of the seabed decided who would rise and who would fall.
Just imagine, beneath the waves of Alexandria's eastern bay, a whole world is sleeping. It's the Magnus Portus, the great harbor of the Roman Empire. Now, as it's documented in the study Measuring the Past, its incredible structures are sitting 5 to 6 meters below the surface. For generations, people have argued about what happened. But the truth? Well, it's a lot more complicated than just a simple rising tide.
Welcome to Inside History HD. Together, we will peel back the layers of narratives long locked away in the archives of history. Our story starts with a ghost in a harbor and with an invisible force that didn't just sink a port. It completely redrew the strategic map of the entire world.
The real clue isn't in what's missing, but in what's still there. Archaeologists were struck by how well preserved the quay's pavement was. See, if it had sunk gradually, the waves would have just ground those stones to dust. The fact that they're intact suggests something much more sudden, a kind of system-wide failure. This isn't a story about water alone. It's about a fundamental mismatch that was about to break the ancient world.
And that leads us to a new way of looking at this history. It wasn't about a single event, but a slow, massive split, a concept that's laid out in the analysis, the Bathymetric Fracture. This was a profound geopolitical shift, and it was set in motion the moment our maritime engineering finally got too big for the natural depth of an entire sea.
So, what is the bathymetric fracture exactly? It's the precise moment a region's geography stops being its greatest asset and becomes its fatal flaw. It is the butterfly effect of our story, a straight line connecting the shallow seabeds of the ancient world to the way global power works today.
For thousands of years, everything was in a kind of perfect harmony. Roman galleys and merchant ships, they only needed a few meters of water to operate, which the sheltered coves of the Mediterranean had in abundance. But then, the steel giants of the modern age came along, and they demand oceanic depths, creating a mismatch that would ultimately shatter the Mediterranean's hold on global trade.
To really get a handle on the scale of this disaster in the making, you have to understand the physical limits the ancient world was up against. The evidence shows they were fighting a constant, hidden war.
If you look at the data from the research paper Roman Ports in the Mediterranean, you see this really critical pattern emerge. Almost 60% of the Roman Empire's major ports were built in river mouths and lagoons. Sure, these spots offered shelter and a route inland, but they also came with a huge, fatal flaw.
And that flaw? It was a constant, exhausting war against sediment. The bathymetric fracture analysis confirms this. Unlike the powerful tides of the Atlantic that naturally scour and clean out deep harbors, the Mediterranean has this weak, microtidal environment. That means silt and mud just relentlessly clogged up its arteries of commerce. Keeping them open was a battle against geology itself, and it was a battle they were never going to win.
And then, everything changed. The 19th century arrives, and with it, the Age of Iron. The Industrial Revolution started forging ships on a scale nobody had ever seen before. And these new vessels demanded one thing that the Mediterranean world just couldn't give them: pure, simple depth.
And there's no better monument to this crisis than the Suez Canal. It was supposed to be the Mediterranean's lifeline, its big comeback on the world stage. But instead, data from the Suez Canal Authority shows it became the ultimate symbol of the depth crisis. From the very day it opened, its entire history has been this constant, frantic game of catch-up, always digging deeper, always one step behind the massive growth of global trade.
Think about this. In just its first 14 years of operation, around 3,000 ships ran aground. The message was clear, and it was brutal. That old harmony was broken. In the new industrial age, depth wasn't just a feature anymore, it was a weapon.
Which brings us right up to our own era, the age of the ultra-large container vessel. These are the titans that carry the modern world on their backs. And when one of these giants meets an ancient, shallow waterway, well, the consequences are felt all over the planet.
We all saw the grounding of the Ever Given. It became this huge global spectacle, and most people blamed it on high winds. But the reality, as detailed in the University of Birmingham's analysis, Suez Canal, the fluid dynamics behind the Ever Given ship blockage, was really just a matter of predictable physics. The ship's enormous size in that narrow channel created a powerful suction effect at its stern, literally pulling it into the bank.
It wasn't just an accident, it was an inevitable clash between modern gigantism and ancient geography.
And the cost of that clash? An estimated $400 million per hour. That one figure just lays bare how fragile our global supply chains really are, and the price we pay for ignoring the cold, hard limits of geography.
So you see, the bathymetric fracture isn't some dusty old historical event. It's the invisible architecture of the world we live in right now. It's a new map of global power, and it's drawn using a single, simple metric: who has deep water?
The evidence, which comes straight from the bathymetric fracture, is, well, it's stark. Global shipping now works in tiers, and each tier is defined by a strategic choke point. So yeah, the Suez can handle today's megaships, but the future? The future belongs to a whole new standard, Malacca Max. That's a class of ship built for the 21-meter depths of the Strait of Malacca. And it's a standard the Mediterranean just physically cannot meet.
And this is where it all leads. This is the final, profound consequence. As the analysis, the European center of gravity is shifting to the northeast, concludes. Europe's strategic focus is moving permanently to the north. Power is now gathering around the deep water ports of the North Sea and the frontiers of the Baltic. The Mediterranean, once the very center of the known world, has now become a regional sea.
The story of the bathymetric fracture is a testament to an enduring truth, that the most powerful forces shaping our world are often the ones we can't see. Beneath the currents of politics and economics, the raw, unchangeable facts of geography are always at work, quietly defining the frontiers of power. If this journey has offered you a new perspective, support our exploration by subscribing to Insight History HD. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next narrative.